When was the last time you walked out of a meeting feeling like you really showed up the way you wanted to? Like you said what you meant, you handled the hard questions, you kept things on track, and you did it without second guessing every word that came out of your mouth. For most of us, that's not the norm. Most of us, we figure it out as we go, which means we're also carrying around a bunch of habits that are quietly working against us, and we might not even realize it. And that's what we're getting into today. My name is Brittany Canaski. I'm a leadership coach and trainer. And today I'm talking with Mariana Swallow, a communications expert who works with people to help them show up with strength and confidence, whether that's in a boardroom, a Zoom call, or any moment where the pressure is on. We're going to talk about the specific words and phrases that are making people trust you less without you even realizing it. So, welcome, Mariana. I'm so glad we're talking about this today.
Me too. Thanks for having me, Brittany.
Yeah, so this is definitely something that comes up a lot with my clients. I just want to dig right into it is that I think a lot of people don't even realize that they're doing it. And there are kind of these sneaky words and phrases that are probably habits for a lot of people. And we hear a lot of other people maybe using these terms, but it's
hmm
actually undermining us in these meetings. And it's, we're doing it to ourselves. We may not even realize it. So I know you talk about these a lot, disclaimers,
Yes.
qualifiers. What are some of those common ones that you hear?
So it's funny, I'm leading into that with a little bit of a delay, though. So the most common ones I hear that kind of undercut your confidence and your strength and credibility are words like, hopefully, I'm not sure, but sometimes, depending on where you place it or depending on the context, the word but. And sometimes when we lead in with things like I'm not sure but or here's an idea, when we start kind of using a lot of words to set something up, lots of times that's distancing ourselves from what we're saying, so that's taking away the strength, but it also undercuts the confidence your audience has within you as a speaker.
I love that distinction of it's separating you from what you're trying to say, essentially. Instead of
hmm
saying the thing, you're saying all these other extra filler words that are really just undermining your credibility. So, for someone who realizes that they do one or several of these, where do you even start? Because a lot of these, it can be really hard to even maybe pick one. Are there certain ones that are maybe worse than others, or where do you recommend starting first?
This is a great question. So there's two ways you can go about this. There's probably more than two, but here's what I recommend. First off, and nobody likes to do this, but first you need to start with awareness. And how do you get aware? It's not just paying attention because when we're in work mode, we're on autopilot. So I say record yourself. If you are leading a meeting or even speaking up in a meeting, we all have these magic little devices that everyone loves to put their opinions on or make TikTok videos. But the minute I tell somebody record yourself, they freak out. But just, hit the voice memo record, put it down in the meeting, and then listen to yourself back and you will catch it. I have a client right now, business owner. She has branches in 5 different cities. And even when we're talking, I catch her all the time undercutting herself with words like, hopefully, I'm not sure, but, and well, I don't want to brag, but, putting these qualifiers. So record yourself and listen back. The second way to do this, and you probably have clients like this, Brittany, yourself, is to work with a coach specifically on your speaking and speaking with confidence. Because, like I said, I catch this with my clients all the time. People who you would think don't have any problem with confidence. And I imagine you see this with your clients too, where they're on autopilot or because of the bad habits they've developed, they undercut themselves with their speech all the time.
Definitely. Yeah, this happens a lot. And again, a lot of times they may not even realize they're doing it. And I've had a client say to me, she felt very confident in work, and
hmm
then her boss came to her in one of their reviews saying that she's not coming across confident. And she was so blown away by that. So then we started to deep dive into it.
Right.
And actually, she did record herself and found a lot of these disclaimers. And now she's been making it a habit to record herself. And I love this technique that she came up with too, is that she's inputting it into a different AI platform to get kind of a summary of, hey, here's the top ones you're doing now, and then tracking it over time to say, oh, okay, now you're getting better over here. let's now look at this word or this other piece that you're doing, which has been really helpful because it can be really hard to record yourself and listen back. And it can be so cringy for most people. I know we do it all the time for a living, but most
Right.
people don't ever want to do it.
And I love that she was putting it into AI and asking it to evaluate it. Believe me, I don't want to put myself out of a job. There's apps that do this. They're not as good as a person, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
But to give your audience just a free way to do this, if you use the voice memo on your app, voice memo app on your phone, sorry, but there's three dots once you make a recording, and I don't know if you can see my screen, but it says view transcript or download transcript. You can just download those, throw it into an AI tool, or you can just read it and see how many times you undercut yourself or dismiss what you're saying. And that's a nice, easy, free tool to kind of catch that.
Yeah, I love that. Even just the transcript and doing Control F to find the different phrases that you
Yes,
know and maybe see how many it counts. That could be an easy, quick way to do it yourself too, if you're not
absolutely.
comfortable using AI. So, and this is the trickiest part is that it can be such a habit. A lot of us have probably been doing it our whole lives. So where does someone actually start for breaking that habit? Like what does that look like in practice, in the moment? You're in the meeting, you're in the room, and you really want to start with a disclaimer. You really want to start off your recommendation or answer with, "Well, I'm no expert, but
Right.
what do you do in practice?"
In practice, like I said, let's start with finding a way to listen back to yourself. But when you are in the room, what I recommend is always be prepared. So don't just go to a meeting because you've been invited. Grab an index card. And if, let's say, you were supposed to talk about sales from last quarter, grab an index card and write down not a script, but an intro and an outro, because the way we kick off, it's number one, it's always the hardest. Number two, most people don't do it. Even if you've only been asked to talk for 5 minutes, what are the things you want to say? Get those things in bullet points. And I would say no more than 3 bullet points, but create an intro even if you don't use it, simply by preparing and being intentional about your words. Thank you, Jim. I'd love to share with you last month's numbers or whatever. You might not say that, but the simple act of preparing will heighten your awareness. And let's say you do write an intro that's something like, thank you, Jim. I'm happy to share the numbers. Simply by preparing yourself to say that, you will be that much less likely to slip into that old habit where you say, well, I'm not really sure, or I only pulled these together this morning, so they might be wrong. I've seen people undercut themselves, men and women, all the time, even when someone hasn't said anything. So I'll give you an example. A lawyer who I presented alongside with at a conference, his session was right before mine. It was a conference that was aimed at designers and art directors in the Chicagoland area. And he was speaking about something that they needed to know. It was related to legal issues for their profession. And he got up and he put up his slides. They were very simple, white background, black text. And the first thing he said was, wow, I'm in a room full of designers. I'm sorry my slides aren't as nice as yours. And when you do that, first of all, you're putting a negative in your audience's mind. And second of
Yeah.
all, now you've drawn attention to something that they probably weren't even thinking about because they wanted your legal advice. So why lead with that? Why lead with, oh, this isn't as good as yours? Or I've seen people say, well, Jane was supposed to present today, but she's sick, so you're stuck with me. I'll do the best I can. You might be better than Jane. You might have a better presentation. You don't know. I've shared the story before. When I lived in California, I used to go to Jazzercise every Friday. And I had this really awesome teacher. And one day I saw a different person at the front of the room. And I'm like, okay, who's this? And she got up to teach. She was front of the room. And she opened the class by saying, hi, I'm filling in for Stacy. I've never taught this before. I'm so nervous. And my first thought was, I'm leaving. Why would I be here? Why would I waste my time with a new teacher? Well, she didn't need to say that. And secondly, Brittany, not just for you, everybody, if you're nervous, don't announce it. You are now lowering expectations in your audience's mind. So I stayed for the class. She had better music, better moves, and was a better instructor than my instructor. And I was like, why did
Oh,
she even say that? So don't
yeah.
put a negative in your audience's mind. Start strong. Even if you don't feel strong, start strong. So write that intro, write how you're going to kick off your comments about last month's sales. And even if you don't use it, that right there will decrease the likelihood that you're going to start with a negative or something that undercuts your confidence.
Yeah, I love those examples. And I was also thinking about other examples that came to mind, or even when I've done that in the past of
Yeah.
kind of lowering the bar, I think is what you're doing when you're saying, before you
Yeah.
start something, it's almost like lowering the bar of their expectations to make you feel less nervous or more comfortable of like, oh, they're not expecting perfection anymore. It's down here coming from a perfectionist. That makes a lot of sense. That's something I used to do as well of, oh, oh, I was sick or whatever it is of like, oh, thanks for bearing with me today. And yeah, it's really not helping you. It's just pointing an arrow to the thing that you're most worried that they're going to pick up on instead of just, hey, we're here today. This is great. Let's do it and get into it.
Right. And you also hit on something important that reminded me that where that comes from, the qualifiers or the lowering the bar, lots of speakers, especially novice speakers, think if I let them know this isn't going to be good, or that I'm nervous, or that Stacy can't be here, or that I'm intimidated by speaking to a group of designers, or whatever it is, that's coming from a place of, oh, if I tell them about my weakness, they're gonna feel bad for me and give me more grace and be on my side. But what's interesting is the opposite happens. Like I said with the jazzercise teacher, it was like, really? Then why should I even waste my time listening to you? And that's not a good space to set. That's not a great way to kick off. So start with confidence, even if you don't feel it. Take the stage. Start from a high note, and your audience will meet you there.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I feel like I have heard that as advice in the past that you should almost lower the bar and give that, oh, I am nervous just as a way to connect with people. But it does almost just, again, lower the bar and make them kind of sit back instead of lean
Yes.
forward and want to connect with you. They're just like, well, she's new, she's nervous. Like, why am I going to listen to her anyway? So
Right,
love that.
right.
Yeah.
Why set the table for that?
Yeah. So another angle of this that I've been personally sitting with thinking about lately, and I'm curious, what you think about this, is that a lot of us obviously speak one way in our personal lives, and then when we go to work, we have to speak a bit differently. And especially, maybe you're walking into a boardroom, you're presenting to executives or leaders or wherever you're maybe less comfortable, and you have to be, a certain level of professionalism. And that's a bit of a mental load in itself when you have to kind of switch that language. And now what we're talking about is to be extra aware of the language in those situations. So it's almost code switching on top of code switching, and it can feel a bit exhausting. I know I think this a lot. And then also it can feel a little bit disconnected of who I am, right? When I'm showing up a little bit differently in these different environments. So, how do you help people navigate this idea without it becoming completely exhausting or completely disingenuous, too?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right, it is code switching. And all of us, even if we're not doing it consciously, all of us are different at home than we are at work, than we are with friends, than we are at a place of worship. It's just how our works. It's how humans work. And the good news is you don't have to switch yourself a complete 180. The best thing you can always bring to the table is yourself, your personality, and your unique perspective and experiences. That said, this kind of goes back to what we talked about in the conversation when you and I talked about how you show up at work and the influence you have. You just want to keep that professionalism around it, the respect, the listening well, the active listening. Being professional and speaking with confidence and to influence people doesn't mean that you are changing everything. It just means we are putting that work lens, if you will, on it. Being professional and respectful when you are presenting to the C-suite, maybe being a little more informal when you are one-on-one with your boss, who you have a very friendly relationship with. So you don't have to abandon yourself. You just need to know what's appropriate in those situations. And lots of times it comes with a little bit of experience, a little bit of paying attention. But the other thing I've advised people to do, especially in group workshops, I get asked, well, what if I'm new here? Or what if I'm now project sharing with another team and I don't know how they work? The simple answer is to ask somebody. There is somebody who works closely with them or who invited you to be part of the team or who asked for your input on this project. Just say to them, hey, I've never worked with Dave before. How does he tend to be? I mean, Brittany, you and I both lead workshops and do keynote speaking. And what's part of the prep you do? When you're going to a new client, you ask, what's the culture? What's the vibe? How many people will be in the room? Is there someone in the room I should be aware of? Who has the most influence? Is there somebody I should be speaking to more in that room or less? So be prepared. It's always okay to ask questions and do your homework if you're not sure what the vibe is or how certain people respond in a room, in a situation, or when you're going to be part of a project or lead a workshop. And it's always okay to ask. You don't have to abandon your entire personality, and you don't have to go a complete 180 where you're a uptight, tight-lipped corporate type person either. It's striking the balance, but it's also asking questions and finding out so you can prepare.
Love that, of being more prepared going into new environments. And something I've learned too is that when you're going into these new environments or situations, you may find different qualifiers and disclaimers come up in different situations that maybe you're working on these ones over here in this situation, and then you're now in a new environment and different ones come up. So it's maybe part of that preparation or just awareness too, of just recognizing it's going to be a little bit different, and maybe
Yeah.
give yourself grace along the way too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing to remember is, especially in those situations, if they're new or they feel like high pressure, things are always a million times worse up here than they are out here, which is also why it doesn't serve you well to throw out a disclaimer or apologize for something that isn't causing harm, because it might feel really, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous and they don't like me up here. And that's adrenaline. That's what adrenaline does. It hijacks our brain, it lies to us. But out here, you're probably coming off real nice. I can't tell you how many times I've watched clients or my workshop participants deliver a speech, and then as soon as they're finished, they go, oh, God, that was awful. And I'm sitting there going, that was amazing. What are you talking about? And it's because they were stuck in their head spinning on whatever misconception they had. And again, doesn't serve anyone well. If you want to go talk to your friends after work or call up your partner and say, God, I think I did really crappy, that's fine. But in the room, you're a rock star. Pretend you're a rock star, even if you don't feel like a rock star.
Yes. What a good takeaway for today. Pretend like a rock star, even if you don't feel like one in the moment.
That's right.
Love it. So, Mariana, if someone listening needs help with removing their qualifiers, where can they find you?
They can visit speakeasystrategies.net. And as soon as you're there, you'll have an opportunity to download my free confidence booster, discover all the things you're doing right. And if you want to talk more, they also have an opportunity to schedule a call with me.
Sounds great. I'm so glad you're here to help people with this very common issue that keeps coming up.
Thank you, Brittany. It's great to talk to you.